to what extent can you use this index, do you think, in the furtherance of Africa as a whole, as well as perhaps to make the occasional adjustment to your own situation?
Thanks, David. And let me also just join colleagues in thanking you and Barclays Africa for firstly inviting me to this panel. Thanks for letting me back into the room after yesterday. And
you're always very welcome.
And commend you on the work that you've done with this index. I think this is quite an important tool, as others have said. And just to add to the issues that Jindong in particular mentioned around political will and the need to have a conducive environment. What, of course, is absolutely critical is a coherent macroeconomic framework that is underpinned by proper institutional framework and institutions that are credible and transparency, availability of information. So this is, as part of seeing Africa transitioning with the huge investment needs, particularly into infrastructure that are required, a very, very important tool that will be very useful in helping sort of with local and regional resource mobilization and attracting, hopefully, international capital flows. So from that perspective, this is very, very important, not only to help inform investment decisions, but also to guide policymakers in gauging what the impact of their policies have been, and also, quite importantly, how they compare relative to what their peers are doing. I think it would be dangerous in terms of what you said in your introduction for us to assume that South Africa will always be at the top. That is something that I don't think should be a working assumption.
Well, you're about 30 points ahead, so it's yours to lose, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All the issues that were pointed to in terms of some of the challenges and the headwinds that we're facing as a country and things that we need to address will impinge on where we go. And this is obviously just a baseline. The key issue is going to be tracking this index as you go ahead and to see where you kind of end up. And that is, if I can just combine that with a call to you and Barclays Africa, that clearly it's going to be important that this index sort of establishes itself. It becomes sort of part of what people look at. And as Jeff was saying earlier on, it is obviously not meant to sort of compete with the others, but it's obviously, I think it's complementary to people looking at the continent from a slightly different perspective as the World Bank and the WEF service are concerned. So I think for us, it is obviously important. We have traveled a long way in terms of setting up our financial markets and investing in investor relations programs, the legal framework, strong regulatory and even more important supervisory practices, deepening of bond markets, building over time yield curves that go out, 30 years, and so on. And that is critically important in making sure also, given what we've seen as interconnectedness of markets, we are a small and open economy. And some of these issues have shielded us, for instance, not only from the global financial crisis, but even now when we see huge volatility in financial markets, the fact that we have deep and liquid markets that allow a lot of the financing and the borrowing, both by households, by companies, and by government, to be predominantly in the local market, and even with a big chunk of what gets funded offshore being in local currency, allows you to sort of weather the storm in that regard. And so we have, as a central bank for sure, have used our experience. I think we're all traveling sort of in the same direction at different speed, and we're at different sort of stages of the road as part of the regional integration discussions that we are having. We have sought to impart some of our experiences in building our financial markets, and also highlighting to people what kind of pitfalls to avoid in the process. But we are certainly not going to be complacent in terms of what we see as being South Africa's ranking at the moment. We need to maintain it, and we need to make sure that all the other developments that are happening don't end up having spillover effects into our ranking on this index.